Today I'm delighted to be joined by Fraser McBeth, Procurement Director at Volta Trucks. Fraser has worked for a wide range of organisations, from startups and OEMs, and we focus today on his experience of joining Volta Trucks, initially to lead the production procurement into overseeing the whole of the procurement function. And we talk openly and honestly around the challenges he faced when Volta Trucks went through bankruptcy and where they are now as an organisation and the future plans for him and the procurement team in 2025. So, without further ado, let's get on with today's show. Fraser, thank you so much for joining me on the Talent Talks podcast here today.
Thanks
Appreciate
very much
you coming down.
Me. Yeah, thanks.
Really interested to talk about Volta and all things that, but I guess I want to kick off with understanding for you that transition in from an OEM into a startup and how that was for you.
Sure. Probably a whirlwind of I guess everybody I think understands what a startup is until you get into it, and then you realize that difference. I loved the transition into this world of, you go in and think you're going to do a procurement job, and in a startup you don't, you do everything and get involved in so much, which was great to really kind of test yourself and get into a different environment. But there's elements of a startup that you just never experience in an OEM world of, how long is your cash runway, and when do you need to buy things against the money running out. It's quite different to when you run into what's our annual budget. But I also found that difference in everywhere I'd worked before. You have a running production line, and that always comes first to make sure that the cash is coming in and the products are going out. And in a startup, depending on when you join, that phase is really different. And when I joined Volta, we didn't have that production line. Okay. We were working towards that, which gave you a really different, priorities list and what you needed to look at. Yeah. But I've loved both sides of it. I'd say that the startup world has been great. My wife maybe won't argue so much about the risk side. But it's been great to really kind of define your own role, see how you want to grow it out. And get involved in lots of different things, because kind of it is all hands to the pump. Everyone's there for a reason, and you get this whole culture mash of everyone's been in loads of different companies before in different backgrounds. You all get thrown into this little pot, and you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. But you don't have, this is how it's been done for 30 years. You don't have the people that are on their 5-year countdown to retirement and tell you every day how many days they've got left. You've kind of got this whole group of people that are really driving towards something, which is an environment that I've loved. And for those that don't know about Volta Trucks, can you just give a quick snapshot context of who you are and the sort of product you've got to market? Obviously self-explanatory trucks, but just in terms of what it is that you guys actually are as a business, if that's okay. No problem. So we are a startup looking to, manufacture and distribute trucks for final mile logistics. So the real focus on city centres. The trucks are all electric, and also they've got a different design to traditional trucks. They are low to the floor. The driver sits in the middle of the cab. You've got great visibility round. So really, the focus for us is on building what we see as the safest truck on the market and trying to make cities safer. So we were originally founded in 2019. We've kind of grown since then. I'm sure we'll talk about it today, but gone through some challenges of a bankruptcy and now kind of coming our way out of that to get trucks. First trucks will be in customer hands the end of this year and out on the roads in Germany to start with.
So talking us at the start of the journey there, going back to kind of when you join, startup business, you're the first person in leading the procurement team. How was that for you? And I think just kind of talking more around the prioritization, because you've got your cash flow, cash is king, certainly in those early days. You're trying to deliver and grow and put some strategic plans in place and roadmaps in place for the business. How do you start navigating where your priority should be as leading the function?
It was probably quite strange. So when I joined initially, I looked after production procurement. There was probably about 10 people in that team already, and the team's job at the minute had been go and build these. I think we built 20 vehicles in the UK, but they were all static build with probably the right suppliers but the wrong manufacturing. And really my job was pull us out from this concept and design phase into series production, make sure that you're in the factory, you've got the right suppliers, and you're ready to go to scale. So on one hand, it was quite tough because you came into this team that's there who feel like they've landed the rocket on the moon, and then you say, we're going to go to a different planet now because now we need to change it all again and really step it up. I think for me personally, that was probably the right time to join. And I'd said to a few people involved, so if I joined earlier, I think I'd have struggled to see, like, okay, how do we get this into production? How do we, turn this into a functioning business that makes money? And that was probably the right timing for me. The priorities bit was hard, and to be honest, the priorities changed almost every day. I think initially I'd finish the day and just feel drained. I remember saying to a few people that I felt like I was really having to use 100% of my brain for the first time because you have so many things to do. A lot of it was really working with some of the wider stakeholders and really trying to tune into the management team and say, okay, what is the priorities? Like, really, where do we need to go? What's the biggest thing? Because if you only have a certain amount of money to take you to the next milestone, there's some things that you really want to do, but you want to do those in 2 years or 3 years time. What are the things that we need to do now? And I guess a different lens on procurement was, for me, you were also worried about what does the investor want to see? Because as you're going through a funding round, for us, investors really wanted to see how many contracts you had in place with suppliers. They wanted to make sure that you had committed supply. Whereas, the manufacturing team, their priority was you need to get parts into production. So you were trying to play those off and really, I guess, try and make sure that everyone was clear on all the things. But definitely in that startup, you've got to be agile, and you've got to be able to work with those changing priorities. And really, as a management team in procurement, that was our job, to try our best to make sure that the team didn't see changing priorities every day, but try to make sure that we weren't going to be really blind to this is what we need to do. If a different challenge comes, you've got to be able to adapt to that and make sure it's the right thing for the business.
Yeah. I guess that's also what your team are being communicated. So you're being pulled one direction from what the C-suite are asking of you and your team, and then your team are hearing from certain suppliers or areas where they need to be prioritizing. So I guess for you, it's streamlining and making sure the team are focusing on those high priorities.
We did a lot of like focus groups and working groups, and then it became, if you had this project to do, you'd pull 2 or 3 people into that project, and you'd say, right, you guys need to come and help us do this. And then if there was another work stream, you would do the same thing with another group of people. So it felt like we were trying to get the business moving forward. You got the team engaged in it, but you weren't then going to 40 people in the team and saying, can all of you guys do this? You just took 3 or 4 and said, okay, you guys do this, but this other group's going to do these things, and everyone's going to try and move it forward. Because otherwise the buyers that are there don't know what to do, because you keep changing the priorities every day. It becomes pretty tough for them to feel like they're going in the same direction.
And then in terms of that growth, you referenced it off air before we started, around you were employee number 100. By the time you'd actually joined, it was 300. You were going up to 900. Then, of course, bankruptcy hits Volta Trucks. How was that for you, leading the procurement team at that time?
Really tough. So we had gone through probably about a month of challenges where payments were getting really tough out to the suppliers. You've got a lot of pressure to manage externally. You've got the team around you to go and look after. And I think for anyone that was in Volta at that time, it was a really tough period. And I think I said to you offline, it happened so suddenly within a kind of 24-hour period, where we went from being a 900 person company to about 100 people within 48 hours, and our procurement team went from, I think, 70-ish people down to about 17, and it was a hard balance of, I guess everyone kind of went through this mourning period of feeling like the company had died, but by the end of the week, I'm there with 16 other people, and we're kind of fighting to get the company sold, to try and keep it alive. So where you feel really bad for the hundreds of people that have lost their jobs,
you're then kicking into survival mode,
you've got to then get it going, because actually if you don't fix it, then the other 100 people are going to lose their jobs at any point over the next few weeks. You definitely went into this fight or flight mode, where it was a case of roll up your sleeves, we need to try and get through this, we need to try and get it bought. pretty early into that period as well. So my boss at the time, who was the procurement director, she decided that she was going to go off and travel the world for 12 months, and pretty quickly said, here's an opportunity for you. You can go and take this. So that kind of, I guess, also launched me into this strange world of the whole company's changed, but I'm going to have to take all this over. And, I've got all of these suppliers that we owed a lot of money to, that it's not just the internal piece of looking after the team. You've got all those suppliers there that you're trying to think of how you try and hold that together. And it definitely changed the shape of my role, in that you'd gone through this whole period of growth, and it was all the positivity of bringing products in, getting things out into the market, growing the team. We were everywhere on social media at the time, and all over LinkedIn, and kind of plastered everywhere. Now to how do we hold this together? How do we try and find a buyer? How do we try and get this investment back to restart this? And you kind of felt like you went from the top floor of the elevator straight down to the bottom, and had to work your way back up again.
And how was that for you personally? You're talking on a professional level there around trying to navigate. You then I didn't actually know that, getting your boss's job as well. So you're not just doing production procurement, doing the whole thing, everything. How did you keep yourself motivated in that critical time? Because you're going to have so many people leaning on you. You are procurement. You've got your team. You've got the C-suite. They're looking. How was that for you? And how did you sort of manage to keep yourself motivated at that time?
It was a really tough period. I think we were talking about it off air, that was 100% the hardest period of my career. And to be honest, I'm not sure that I will ever have something that's that tough again.
We hope you don't.
I really hope not. I mean, I've said to a few people I know a lot about bankruptcy that I wish I didn't know, but fortunately there is an element of it that says, if you're ever in that position again, and I guess it has been really helpful as well that you think over that time period of the last 12 months, as we've gone through these fundraising rounds, and the last 12 months have been really tough as well. We've come close to the wire a few times, but a lot more of what to expect. To be honest, I think probably the first month or so was just a blur of the bankruptcy, and you're trying to support the team and make sure that they feel supported. People don't know if they're going to have jobs. They can get called in by the administrators any day and be told. I remember at least one time in the month after we were already bankrupt, and then in the administration process, I got a phone call that said, we think we're going to, go into liquidation today. Which 2 people need to stay, and the other 15 have to go. And you have to wrap your head around, right, 15 people might get made redundant today, and actually it's all okay. So you really went through these roller coasters of the ups and downs. I used a career coach myself, and I've used him for a number of years. Kind of having those outside sessions were really useful to go and talk to. It was amazing how many people in my network reached out when we went bankrupt. Old bosses, people I'd worked with, people I'd worked with 10 years ago who I hadn't heard from reached out, which was really positive to kind of feel like you had that network. And then really all we tried to do is kind of build the team that we had. You kind of built this mentality of, we're all here, we're all going to fight for it. Try and kind of build that mentality amongst ourselves, where you feel like it's a safe network. It's it's for us to go and find that balance. But lots of walking meetings, lots of time outside. I will admit that it's kind of been like a good kick for me. That people in work will tell you I've got a treadmill that I use under my standing desk, and I join team meetings now across the company, and I'm walking on a treadmill to try and feel like you need to find that balance of not just getting sucked into it, being all encompassing. Because I think a startup, and especially when you're tight on cash, it really can be. You've got to find that outlet and find that way to balance, because the team are looking at you for answers.
Of course, and I presume as well, some of that communication, you need to protect your team from some of those conversations to ensure that they're not going to be, you're trying to, it's such a hard balance, isn't it? Because you're trying to engage them and get them enthused about their job, while the reality is, it could be in liquidation potentially that day. It's being open, honest with your team, but then find the balance of the protection element as well. That's a hard balance to have.
I still think some days I think I get it right, and some days I think I still get it wrong, because
that's management though, isn't it? I guess.
As you're going through the process, you've got to make them feel a little bit aware. I think I've always tried to be really transparent with the team, and I've always felt like they have to go and deliver that message to suppliers. So they've got to believe in the message, and either that message is, we think this is going to work and we think we're going to come out, or this is really tight and this might go wrong.
Yeah.
And they've got to, really believe in where they are. I think that transparency's helped, because the team that we've got there, or the team that have been with us the whole way through it, they get the risks, they understand where they are. But actually, I think, credit to them, they've really risen to the challenge of, and I think a lot of them feel like if they had to go and have conversations with suppliers about, I can't pay you the money that I owe you, we need to do a deal and we're going to work to try and get that. Those were conversations that 3 years ago or 2 years ago, people probably weren't that confident to go and have, and they really wouldn't have felt confident to pick up a phone to a supplier. Now you sit down with the team, you say, here's the money, here's the strategy, and they're like running out the room to go and do the phone calls and try and do the deals. And that's been great to see that confidence build of, that resilience. And I think for everyone, the challenges that you've had to face is just this unknown of, most people never have to do it in their careers, but now if they've got to go and do a negotiation, it's probably never going to be as tough as, I've got no money to pay you. What are we going to do? How do we fix this?
Yeah, but it's a sort of a tool in the armory now that your team, including yourself, have got now, and they can, wherever their careers go and wherever your career goes in the future, you've got that, incredibly tough, but what a great example of really driving commercial value at an incredibly high pressured, critical environment for the startup. So as we evolve now, coming hopefully at the other side of it, and as the business sort of hopefully gets where you need it to be again, and your procurement team gets to where it needs to be, how do you drive that sort of high performance culture in your team?
Yeah, I'd say it's something that I've really enjoyed. So for me, I want anyone in our team, you've got to, you spend so much time at work, you've got to enjoy it, and you've got to want to, be engaged in it and be part of it. And one of my big non-negotiables is, no matter if you just want to be the best junior buyer, if you want to be a CEO, if you want to be part of our team, you've got to want to improve. And that for me is a main thing. It doesn't work for everyone, but I think for the people that are there, it really kind of builds this, environment where people feel like they're developing, feel like they're getting better, and they can do that in the role they're in, or they can do that through progressing. We spent a lot of time trying to talk about the culture that we want to set and how we want to develop as a team, and building a safe space where people feel like they can challenge each other and they can have that, we want like healthy tension. I want, it should be okay to disagree, and even for me, if I come and say, look, this is what I think we should do, if you don't agree, tell me. Let's have that conversation. Let's be professional about it. Sometimes I'll have to come back and say, I get you, but this is how we're going to do it.
Of course.
But other times, other people will be right. And I think really trying to build that in with the team of feeling like we're going to be a team that's better. We're going to be a team that's developing. And I think probably from the start, I've really felt that you're trying to break into a market that no one else has done before, especially over the last 3 years. EV world is just this graveyard of other companies that have failed, and it's going to be really tough. And actually, if you have a great year one year and you do the exact same thing next year, unfortunately in our world, it's not going to be good enough. Yeah. So there is that balance of trying to get the teams in this mindset that things have to improve, we have to get better. We do a lot of time with the team. We really try and encourage offsites, get ourselves away, go and sit together and go and talk. We try and really encourage people doing that self-learning and listening to podcasts and bringing new ideas to the table. And I think for me, it's almost as important that while everyone's got work to do, they should also go and spend that time looking at themselves, looking at the team, looking at how we can improve, because especially across the management team, if we just do the doing and if we just focus in on the deliverables, it's hard to keep everybody motivated. We've got to think about what's different and how the world's changing. And I do think, especially across procurement, it can be a really tough environment. You've got to create an environment where people want to come and work in that team, and that's really what I've tried to set out. Is it's going to be hard work, but this team's going to make you better, and if you want to be part of that, this is the place for you. Because like I say to the team now, I cannot give you security, but I can give you a place where you feel like psychologically safe, that you can speak your mind, that you've got support. You get a lot of flexibility, and you get really good challenges to go and do. But if you want to create new processes, if you want to do something different, you go do that. You can roll it out as much as you want. And I think for us, really going into the next year, it is still about spending that time and really investing in, talking about what does good look like, and how do we need to make the right changes. How do you get the teams motivated? How do you get them trained? How do you make sure that they feel supported? And especially when we go through recruitment drives and bringing people in, it's about bringing in the right people. Like for me, it's a lot about, have you got the right mindset, and are you the right type of person? We can teach the skills. Like if somebody's not a great negotiator, you can fix that. If somebody's got the wrong attitude, or wants it to be all about them, you're not going to work in our team. That's going to be too tough, because you're just going to make it more difficult for everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's sort of high challenge, high support that you're kind of offering there. And I guess the dynamics are with your team. You were saying before around it's quite remote, in terms of where you guys are at the moment. You've got different senior members of the team that are based, not just talking about UK, internationally, right?
Yeah.
So I guess as you start to recruit again, it's about creating a hub as well, where you guys can work together, as well as remotely, and giving people that flexibility, which I guess is perhaps the next sort of challenge, hopefully a positive one, but the next challenge for you as you sort of look to hire your talent again.
It is. I found that freedom of being able to recruit people from anywhere has been great, because we've had access to talent that most businesses wouldn't get access to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been really incredible. But I think especially in a startup, you just can't do procurement roles completely remotely, because there are too many challenges, especially when you're trying to build a culture and you're trying to introduce new things and you move at the pace that you're at. I think for a lot of businesses, it's still trying to find that balance is tough. Of, we were talking about it, is it 3 days a week in the office, or is it 1 day a week in the office? And even if it's then only 1 week, but someone's on holiday for 2 weeks, that means that you don't see them for half the month.
Yeah.
How do you try and get people in it? And it's something we're really going to have to work on over the next year. Of, as we bring people in, they've got to be really aware of the type of environment. People, will get a lot of flexibility on where they work, the working hours that they do, but how do you then make sure that you're embedded in that team? Like when you're there in the office, like we want it to be present. And it was a big thing for me about coming into the office isn't then doing the same thing. Yeah. So you're not in the office to sit on Teams calls or do emails. You're in the office to interact with people, to speak to engineering or to speak to finance and use sessions together. I think for every company, it's about promoting what you do at home and what you do in the office, and how do you really use that time? Because like for me, I travel 2 hours to get into the office. I don't want to go in there and sit on my own. I want to go in and feel like I'm adding value and feel like I'm doing the things that I can't do if I'm at home.
Quick break from the episode. I hope you're enjoying today's show. To keep up to date with our Talent Talks podcast episodes, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. This will help build our audience and our mission to raise the profile of procurement. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. And I think, that's it. It's creating a culture when you're in the office. I had this conversation with someone the other day, and they were in, and all their team were just in different booths doing team meetings. So you want the team to be together, sharing best practice, successes, and the failures. It's a collective effort, particularly in the high pressure environment that you guys have. In terms of from an EV perspective and with vehicles, obviously most brands are in that sort of world now, so it's an incredibly competitive world. Obviously, you guys are focusing more from a trucks perspective than obviously the saloon cars and things like that. But in terms of that market and the technology that you're having to adapt, how have you found that? Because tech's evolving, the technology you're utilizing in cars is evolving. So how do you stay up to speed with it? And then I guess how have you been able to apply that into Volta?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of our very first challenges on. And I didn't really appreciate it until I joined, but the automotive world is pretty tough. Commercial vehicles the same. That some of the biggest suppliers in the world work in that sector, and they can pick and choose who they work with. Yeah. And you go into that world and you're a startup, and basically you're offering to them is, I've got no guaranteed volume. I don't really have guaranteed money. Do you want to work with me? Yeah. and it's not that
that's a hard sales pitch for you.
So we really tried to find a different way, and I think it probably benefited me that for that first couple of years of Volta being alive, I was in my previous employer, I was in the COVID world, the semiconductors, trying to keep production lines running. But I could just see every supplier essentially getting fed up with the traditional way of managing it. And, it was a lot of bang your fist on the table and who can shout loudest to get the parts. And, I remember one of my suppliers at the time publicly cancelled a $500 million a year contract because they said, you guys just don't listen to us when we talk about cost. So when we came into Volta, we said, right, we've got no money, we've got no volume. We need to be a customer of choice. We need to make it easy to do business with us and really engage with these suppliers, because otherwise we're not going to get access to the best technology. And that really became like a bit of a mantra for us of being an attractive customer. And it worked because we got access to technology that we never should have been able to get access to. Some of our suppliers today are the biggest companies in automotive, but when we've gone to trade shows and exhibitions, we're the people that they come and have dinner with. And I remember we dinner with one of them a couple of years ago now, and we sat there and they just gone through a big merger, and we were talking about how do you integrate the culture and how do you manage the merger and how do you manage your teams remotely and how do you do all these things. And at the end of the dinner, I think it was one of their VPs said, this is just so different. We had dinner with one of your competitors last night and all we spoke about was cost. Like they just battered us on why we're too expensive, and you guys are here trying to figure out how our company works and how we can do more things together and how we could do marketing activities. And I think building those relationships with the people really helped us, because then suppliers feel like, actually, you're a company that can move fast, and if we give you this technology, you can put it on the truck in 2 years. But if I give it to one of your competitors, they're going to take 5 years, if they're even bothered, because they're going to be more focused on that production line or the money. And that will obviously change for us as we go into being in series production. You get different challenges, but I think that approach has really helped us with the suppliers, so that we want them to feel like if you give us an opportunity, we're going to use it, we're going to try and integrate it and put it in. And I think the other side of technology for us was, we, as a procurement team at least, we had no processes, no systems. It was probably my biggest bugbear about when we went bankrupt, because we had all these things that we were going to introduce to try and help our team with tech. That we'd looked at some really cool things with AI around how you could get different risks reports on suppliers. One of them was a company one of my friends worked in, actually, I think called Literate AI, and they could scour the web for social media posts about a supplier. So you could get insights of what was going to come in their public accounts before they got released, because you would get rumblings of what was coming on Twitter. Or you could set it for raw materials or different things, because everyone in automotive is looking for the same data to understand where the next risk is. But if you can get that before your competitors, or if you can analyze that in a different way, you can act faster than they can. And it's definitely some things that we want to look at introducing next year of, how can you bring these types of tools in to help the buyers? How can you create supplier portals so that the suppliers have got this one-stop shop to access everything that you need, where they can look at their tender progress, but they can see the contracts, they can see your volume forecast, they can get business updates and get access to everything in one location. They don't have to email the buyer in the USA and then the buyer in the UK to try and get different updates on different things.
So everyone's got a live account to see the data from you guys and what you're doing.
That's our ideal state that we can get to, is supplier logs in and they've got access to everything in one location. And again, just stick to that approach of how do you make it easy for them to do business with you. Like what are the big bugbears that they've got from their other clients, and actually how do we then go and try and fix some of those things. I think that's really where we'll focus, is initially make life easy for the suppliers, but also try and take away a lot of that admin work that comes onto the buyers, where you can just automate things, because we don't have that legacy still.
So it's almost a blessing, in, if I can use that word, in terms of because you didn't have some of those processes and tech. Obviously, when you've almost got a bit more agility now to hopefully be able to implement that. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, and it was one of the crazy things about the bankruptcy is I don't think any of us realized that when we got bought over, so when we officially came out of bankruptcy into the new company, everything disappeared overnight. So we dropped to Outlook and Microsoft. And that was it. So everything was then on Excel. And I look at it now and think the work that we've been able to do in the last 12 months, we've done all these settlement negotiations, we've built vehicles, we've ordered new parts, we've got everything in, basically from Outlook, Excel, and one ordering tool. And that's it. And other companies, you can imagine going into another OEM and saying, I'm going to take away all your systems. It would take years to get back to that. And, our IT team, at the end of the week, we had an ordering tool, we had these things set up, and you just kind of find a way to get through it. But definitely as we move forward and we get into a production world, we've got to simplify it. But it's really easy now when we start thinking about reports and systems. You can do that with the mindset of how do I make sure this is automated from the start and make it as easy as you can, rather than trying to create something and then work your way back. We're trying to really build it from the ground up.
No, that's really good to hear. I'm glad that you're coming out of the other side now, and obviously, hopefully, exciting times ahead for 2025. Reflecting then on this journey, and it's definitely been, I know that word's used a lot on podcasts and social media and stuff, but it definitely for you, for all of our listeners, I'm sure would agree, this has been a journey for you personally, and indeed the procurement team and Volta Trucks, obviously, widely. What would you say, if you could pinpoint one thing that's been your biggest learn, and maybe advice to anyone that's, what would your biggest sort of learn be? Startups
are hard. it's probably don't underestimate a startup. It is tough. I'd always really wanted to try a startup, and naively I thought I've got to go into a startup with one of two things. So either I've got to go in with experience of doing a startup, or I've got to go in with the knowledge of a market. So at least I can bring something to the table, because otherwise I'm just another person who thinks that there's pool tables in the office and this is a great place to work.
Another quirky startup.
And at least when I was coming into Volta, I was bringing experience of working in trucks before. I was bringing all the supplier relationships that I had. But you've never had to experience, like, do I get paid at the end of the month? And actually, when's the next chunk of money coming? And all these systems don't work, but in all these other companies, you've got all these departments that have been there for 20 years and know how to do it, and you don't. And all of a sudden you spend your day doing things that aren't your job, and then when you get frustrated about it, you sit there and go, yeah, but whose job is it? Because that department doesn't exist. So you've got to find that. It's hugely rewarding, but they are high risk. I think we've spoke about it since the bankruptcy. I think you can never appreciate how tough it is until you do it. And until you're living and breathing it, because it does become all encompassing, especially if you've got a team and you feel like you're responsible for that team. And when you get close to the wire, it feels like that's their income as well, and you're trying to fight to find a way to get through it. I would say if you were coming in to a startup, probably the best piece of advice I could give to someone is, I guess, just to be open. Everyone comes from a different background and everyone comes from their experience, but your experience isn't always the right way. And just because the company you were in did it that way for 5 years, you're going to go into this environment where there's going to be hundreds of people who have all come from different environments, and you've got to find this mix. And it can be frustrating because you sit there some days and you go, yeah, I get that you guys did it that way, but that wasn't right. But also it doesn't mean that your way was right either.
Yeah, of course.
And you've got to be really open to finding that kind of mix of different things. And, it's, even for me, like, other people have got things in their companies that were really big on the agenda, but they've never been in my career. So you've got to then get used to that culture clash of people can get really passionate in startups, but you've got to be really open-minded. That's probably the biggest thing for me is, sit, listen to what other people say, try and figure out the best way, appreciate their background and their inputs, Because I've definitely found that, you know, there's a lot of other companies where I wouldn't ever have expected you guys to do it that way, but it's great. Okay, let's do that. Let's adopt that.
Yeah. Fraser, thank you. Before we finish, I've got 5 quick-fire questions that I'd like to ask you, if that's okay. I know we haven't prepared for this, so looking forward to whatever comes in sort of the head first. So question 1, who is your biggest inspiration?
Do you know what? I'd probably say my dad. My dad has always done really well for himself in his career. He's worked really hard. He's given us a great life, and I guess he's always put that like good level of challenge onto us to, like, no matter what it is that you do, and even if you're not great at it, like, always try 100%. Like, you've got to put the work in and try and get there. I'd probably say my dad.
Brilliant. What gets you up each morning?
Oh, I'm just really driven. Like, I'm more likely to go through boredom than I am to go through burnout, because I just can't sit still, but I've always been that way. Just that drive.
Brilliant. One word to describe the future of procurement.
Value add, if that counts as a word.
I'll let you count that.
Yeah, if that counts as a word.
Perfect. What's the best career advice you've ever received?
Don't have a 5-year plan.
Love that.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
I had an old MD, and when I did my apprenticeship, every director you sat down with would ask you what your 5-year plan was, and I never had one. And I met this director one time, and he went, good, because I don't either. And his view was, no matter what you set yourself as 5 years' time, you're going to fail on it. So I think the example he used was, you might want to be procurement director, but you end up becoming the sales director. You failed. You didn't do your plan, but you're in equally as good a job, if not better.
Yeah.
So why would you set yourself that must-have?
Yeah. You can almost become a bit too obsessed with the plan.
Yeah, like that I've got to do that. And
Yeah.
you know, if it's being a director, you could be a director in a company that's 5 people, or you could be a director in a company that's 5,000 people.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're the same role. So ever since then, that kind of reassured my need to not have a plan.
Great advice. If you weren't in procurement, what would you be doing?
So it's completely random, but my friend's a DJ, and I used to help manage him. And I'd probably end up doing something in music, like probably doing artist bookings, or
like a talent manager or something.
Yeah,
like that.
probably something like that. That was probably my only other thing early in my career. Like, I'd love to say sales or something, but I'm horrible at it. It's just, probably something really different, like in music. That'd probably been where I ended up.
Brilliant, love it. Fraser, it's been great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your openness and honesty as well. It's been really fascinating talking about the journey at Volta, and I really wish you the best of luck for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks.